and enjoy, because here goes nothing else. If I can get my bookmark out. Hello. Is it good? Like you can see all that jazz. Good, you can see me and as you can hear me properly. Sorry guys, I seem to be having an issue with my internet. Whew. Okay, I'm hoping we're still live. Perfect. Sorry guys. When it rains, beside it pouring, my internet is no good. So, okay. Kazine. Right. Chapter 18. Katie, you've been so quiet today. What's on your mind? I winced, wishing my mother wasn't so good at reading me. I'm just tired. I forced a smile for her benefit. Are you sure that's all? Guilt ate at me. I rarely spent time with my mother, and I wish I hadn't been distracted. I'm sorry, Mum. I guess I am a little out of it today. She started washing our dinner dishes. How are things with Damon and Dee? We've made it all day without talking about them. They're doing great. I think I may go watch a movie with them later. She smiled. Are you going with both of them? I narrowed my eyes. Mum, please. Honey, I'm your mother. I do have a right to ask. I'm not sure, really. I don't even know if we are going. It was just an idea. I grabbed an apple out of the fruit bowl and took a bite. What are you doing with your evening, Mum? She tried to look nonchalant. I'm going out and having coffee with Mr. Michaels tonight. Mr. Michaels? And I asked between bites. Wait, is he that fine-looking doctor at the hospital? Yes, the one and only. Is this a date? I leaned against the counter, grinning around the apple. Go, Mum. Oh, sorry. I think it's more of a go, Mum. My mum blushed. Actually blushed. It's just coffee, not a date. That explains why she kept picking out dresses today, going as far as making me choose at least 2 of the pretty things from her closet. Well, I hope you have fun on your not a date, but sounds like a date. Smiling, she chatted on about her evening plans, and then about a patient she had yesterday. Before she left to get ready, she brought me a couple of dresses she'd found in the back of her closet. Well, if you go out tonight, why don't you wear one of these? You look pretty in them. They always looked too young for me to wear. My nose scrunched. Mum, I'm not the one who has a date tonight. She scoffed. I don't either. Whatever, I yelled as she raced up the stairs. It didn't take her long to get ready and leave. Since it wasn't technically a date, she was meeting him at a little diner in town. I hope she had a good time. She deserved to have fun. Since Dad had passed away, I don't think she'd even look twice at a guy, which meant Mr. Michaels must be special. Oh, Mr. Michaels. Other than Dee mentioning that we should get together, there hadn't been any plans for the night. I knew Damon was keeping an eye on me from next door all day, but I'd refused to let him hover at my house. They told me the Aaron was stronger at night and preferred to attack then. I felt pretty safe during the day. I'd wanted to spend a normal day of reading and blogging and hanging out with my mum. But it was strange going about normal life after such a huge secret. I felt like there should be stopping accidents, curing wild hunger, and saving kittens caught in trees. Tossing the apple core in the garbage, I fiddled with the ring on my finger as I looked over the dresses on the table. I wouldn't be wearing them on a date anytime soon. A sharp knock on the back of the door jarred me out of my thoughts. I went to the door and Damon stood there, even dressed in casual jeans and a plain white t-shirt that strained against his upper body. He looked utterly magnificent. It was unsettling. And what was even more unnerving was the way he stood there and stared at me. His brilliant jade gaze was intense and consuming. "Hey?" I said. He nodded, giving me no clue what kind of mood he was in. "Oh boy. Do you want to come in?" He shook his head. "No, I thought maybe we could go do something." "Do something?" Amusement flashed in his eyes. "Yeah, unless you have a review to post or a garden that needs tending." "Ha ha." I started to shut the door in his face. He threw his hand out, easily stopping it without touching it. "Okay, let me try that again. Would you like to do something with me?" Not really, but I was curious, and a part of me was beginning to understand why Damon was so standoffish. Maybe, just maybe, we could do this without wanting to kill one another. "What did you have in mind?" Excuse me. Damon pushed away from the house and shrugged. "Let's go to the lake." "I'll check the road before I cross this time." I followed him, avoiding his amused look. I shoved my hands in the pockets of my shorts and decided to not beat around the bush. "You're not taking me out in the woods because you changed your mind and decided your secret is not safe with me, are you?" Damon burst out laughing. "You're very paranoid." I snorted. "Okay, that is coming from an alien who apparently can toss me into the sky without touching me." "You haven't locked yourself in any rooms or rocked in any corners, right?" I rolled my eyes and began walking again. "No, Damon, but thanks for making sure I'm mentally sound and all." "Hey," he threw up his hands. "I need to make sure you aren't going to lose it and potentially tell the entire town what we are." "I don't think you need to worry about that for several reasons," I replied dryly. Damon gave me a pointed look. You know how many people we've been close to? I mean, really close to?" I made a face. It wasn't hard to imagine what he meant. Oddly, I found myself not liking those images. His chuckle was deep and throaty. "Then one little girl goes and exposes us. Can you see how hard that is for me to trust? I'm not a little girl, but if I could go back in time and do it all over, I wouldn't have stepped out in front of that truck." "Well, that is good to know," he responded. "But I don't regret finding out the truth. It explains so much." "Wait, can you go back in time?" I asked seriously. The possibility hadn't crossed my mind before, but now I honestly wondered. Damon sighed and shook his head. "We can manipulate time, yes, but it's not something we do, and only going forward. At least I've never heard of anyone being able to bend time in the past." "Oh, thank you." That's so lovely of you. My eyes felt like they were going to pop out. Jesus, you guys make Superman look lame. He smiled as he dropped his head down to avoid a low-hanging branch. "Well, I'm not telling you what our kryptonite is. Can I ask a question?" I asked after a couple of moments of us walking along the leaf-covered trail. When he nodded, I took a deep breath. "The Bethany girl that disappeared. She was involved with Dawson, right?" He cut me a sharp, sidelong glance. "Yes." "And she found out about you guys?" Several seconds passed before he answered. "Yes." I glanced at him again. His face was stoic as he stared straight ahead. "And that's why she disappeared?" Again, there was a gap of silence. "Yes." Okay. He was only going to give me one-word answers. Nice. "Did she tell someone? I mean, what did she have to disappear?" Damon sighed heavily. "It's complicated, Kat. Complicated means a lot of things. Is she dead?" He didn't answer. I stopped, digging an odd-shaped pebble out of my sandal. "You're just not going to tell me?" He grinned at me with infuriating ease. "So why did you want to come out here?" I shook the rock out and put my sandal back on. "Because it's fun for you to be all evasive?" "Well, It is amusing to watch your cheeks get all pink when you're frustrated. I glared at him. Damon smirked and started walking again. We didn't say anything until we reached the lake. He went to the edge and glanced back to where I stopped a few feet behind him. Besides, the twisted fact that I like watching you get all bent out of shape, I figured you'd have more questions. Well, it was sick he liked pissing me off. Even sicker was the fact I liked watching him get all pissy too. I do. Some I won't answer, some I will. Damon paused, looking thoughtful. Might as well get all your questions out of the way. Then we won't have a reason to bring any of this up again, but you're going to have to work for those questions. Never bring up the fact that they were aliens? Huh, okay. What do I have to do? Meet me on the rock. He turned back to the lake and kicked off his shoes. What? I'm not wearing a bathing suit. So? He turned around grinning. You could almost strip down. Not going to happen. I folded my arms. Figured, he replied. Haven't you gone swimming in your clothes before? Yes, who hadn't? But it wasn't even that warm. Why do you have to go swimming for me to ask a question? Damon stared at me for a moment, then his lashes lowered, fanning his cheeks. It's not for you, but for me. It seems like a normal thing to do. The tips of his cheekbones turned pink in the sun. The day we went swimming? Yes, I said, taking a step forward. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. The green churned slowly, giving an appearance of vulnerability. Did you have fun? When you weren't being a jerk, and if I ignore the fact that you were bribed into it, then yes. A smile pulled at his lips as he looked away. I had more fun that day than I can remember. I know it sounds stupid, but it's not stupid. My heart lurched. At once, I sort of understood him better. Underneath it all, I think he wanted to be normal. Okay, let's do this. Just don't go underwater for 5 minutes. Damon laughed. Deal. I kicked off my sandals while he tugged off his shirt. Ooh. I tried not to stare at him, especially since he was watching me like he expected me to change my mind. Tossing him a quick grin, I stepped up to the water's edge and dipped my toes in. Oh my god, the water is cold. He winked at me. Watch this. His eyes took on that eerie glow, his whole body vibrating and breaking apart into a fiery ball of light that flew up into the sky and dove straight in, lighting the lake like a pool light. He zipped around and around the rocks in the center at least a dozen times in as many seconds. Show off. Alien powers? I asked, teeth chattering. Water ran off his hair as he leaned over the edge of the rock, extending a hand. Come in, it's a little warmer now. Gritting my teeth in preparation for the icy water, I was shocked to discover its temperature wasn't too bad. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't icy cold anymore. Stepping all the way in now, I waded out to the rocks. Any other cool talents? I can make it so that you can't even see me. I took his hand, and he pulled me out into the water and onto the rock, wet clothes and all. He let go, scooting back. Shivering, I welcomed the warmth of the sun-baked rock. How can you do things without seeing? Without me seeing? How can you do things without me seeing? Leaning back on his elbows, he looked unaffected by the cold swim. We're made of light. We can manipulate the different spectrums around us using them. It's like we're fracturing light, if that makes any sense. Not really. I needed to pay more attention in science class. You see me turn into my natural state, right? When I nodded, he went on, and I sort of vibrate until I break apart into tiny particles of light. Well, I can selectively eliminate the light, which allows us to be transparent. I pulled my knees to my chest. That's kind of amazing, Damon. He smiled up at me, flashing a dimple in one cheek before he lay back on the rock, folding his hands behind his head. I know you have questions. Ask them. I had so many questions. I wasn't sure which one to start with. Do you guys believe in God? He seems like a cool guy. I blinked, not sure whether to laugh at that or not. Did you guys have a God? I remember there was something like a church, but that's all. The elders don't talk about any religion, he said. Then again, we don't see any elders. What do you mean by elders? The same thing you'd mean an old person. I made a face at him. He grinned. Next question. Why are you such an ass? The words came out before I could even think twice. Everyone has to excel at something, right? Well, you're doing a great job. His eyes opened, meeting mine, for a second before closing. You do dislike me, don't you? I hesitated. I don't dislike you, Damon. You're hard to like. It's hard to figure you out. So are you, he said. Eyes closed, face relaxed. You've accepted the impossible. You're kind to my sister and to me, even though I admit I've been a jerk to you. You could have run right out of the house yesterday and told the world about us, but you didn't. And you don't put up with any of my crap, he added with a soft laugh. I like that about you. Whoa, wait, you like me? Next question, he said. Are you guys allowed to date people, humans? He shrugged. Allowed is a strange word. Does it happen? Yes. Is it advised? No. So we can. But what would be the point? Not like we can have a lasting relationship when we have to hide what we are. So you guys are like in other, like us in our other departments? Damon sat up, arching a brow. Come again? I felt my cheeks flush. Like sex. I mean, you guys are all glowy and stuff. I don't see how certain stuff would work. Damon's lips curled into a half smile, and that was the only warning he gave. Most unbelievably fast, I was on my back and he was above me in a flash. Ooh la la. Are you asking me if I'm attracted to human girls? He asked. Dark, wet waves of hair fell forward. Tiny droplets of water fell off the end, splashing against my cheek. Or are you asking me if I'm attracted to you? Using his hands, he lowered himself slowly. There wasn't an inch of space between our bodies. Air fled up my lungs at the contact of his body against mine. My goodness, I was getting heated. He was male and ripped in all the places. I was soft. Oh, goodness. Being this close to him was startling, causing an array of sensations to zing through me. I shivered, not from the cold, but from how warm and wonderful he felt. I could feel every breath he took, and when he shifted his hips, my eyes went wide. I gasped. Oh, goodness me. She gasped. Oh, yeah. Certain stuff was definitely working. Damon rolled off me, onto his back beside me. Next question, he asked, voice deep and thick. I didn't move. I stared wide-eyed at the blue skies. You could have just told me, I looked at him. You didn't have to show me. And what fun would there be in telling you? He turned his head toward me. Next question, kitten. Why do you call me that? You remind me of a little fuzzy kitten, all claws and no bite. Okay, that makes no sense. He shrugged. I searched my scattered thoughts for another question. I had so many, but he totally blown my train of thought to smithereens. Do you think there are more Aram around? Only the barest hint of emotion flitted across his face. He tipped his head back, studying me. They are always around. And they're hunting you? It's the only thing they care about. He returned to staring at the sky. Without our powers, they are like humans, but vicious and immoral. They're into ultimate destruction and whatever. I swallowed hard. Have you fought a lot of them? Yep, he eased onto his side, using his hand to support his head. A lock of hair fell over his eye. I lost count of how many I've faced and killed. And with you lit up like you are, more will come. My fingers itched to brush that strand of hair back. Then why did you stop the truck? I was just having a bit of trouble turning the page there. Would you have preferred I'd let it pancake you? I didn't even bother responding to that. Why did you? A muscle popped in his jaw as his gaze drifted over my upturned face. Honestly? Yes. Will it get me bonus points? He asked softly. Holding my breath, I reached up and brushed back the strand of hair. My fingers barely grazed his skin, but he sucked in a sharp breath and closed his eyes. I pulled my hand away, not sure why I'd done that. Depends on how you answer the question. Damon's eyes opened. The pupils were white, strangely beautiful. He eased down on his back again, his arm against mine. Next question. I clasped my hands together over my stomach. Why does using your powers leave a trace? Humans are like a glow-in-the-dark t-shirt to us. When we use our abilities around you, you can't help but absorb our light. Eventually, the glow will fade, but the more we do, the more energy we use, the brighter the trace. D blurring out doesn't leave much of anything. The truck incident and when I scared the bear, that leaves a visible mark. Something more powerful, like healing someone, leaves a stronger trace. A faint one. Nothing big, so I'm told, but it lingers longer for some reason. I should have been more careful around you, he continued. When I scared the bear, I used a blast of light, which is kind of like a laser. It left a large enough trace on you for the Aram to see you. You mean the night I was attacked? I whispered, my voice hoarse. Yes. He dragged a hand down his face. Aram don't come here a lot, because they don't think any Luxon are here. The beta quartz in the rocks throws off our energy signature and hides us. That's one of the reasons why there are a lot of us here. But there must have been one coming through. He saw your trace and knew there had to be one of us nearby. It was my fault. It wasn't your fault. You weren't the one who attacked me. But I basically led him to you, he said, voice tight. At first, I couldn't speak. There was a horrible punch-in-the-gut type of feeling that spread to the tip of my fingers and down to my toes. I felt the blood drain out of my face, so fast it left me dizzy. Suddenly, what the man had said made sense. Where are they? He'd been looking for them. Where is he now? Is he still around? Is he going to come back? What? Damon's hand found mine and squeezed. Kitten, calm down. You're going to have a heart attack. My eyes dropped to our hands. He didn't pull his away. I'm not going to have a heart attack. Are you sure? Yes. I rolled my eyes. He isn't a problem anymore, he said after a few seconds. You killed him? Yeah, I kind of did. You kind of did? I didn't know there was any kind of in killing someone. Okay, yes, I did kill him. There wasn't a single ounce of doubt or remorse in his voice, like killing someone didn't even faze him. I should be afraid, very afraid of him. Damon sighed. We're enemies, Kitten. He would have killed me and my family after absorbing our abilities if I didn't stop him. Not only that, he would have brought more here. Others like us would have been in danger. You would have been in danger. What about the truck? I'm glowing brighter now. I ignored the clenching in my stomach. Will there be another? Hopefully there are none nearby. If not, the traces on you should fade. You'll be safe. He was guiding his thumb across my hand in a silent alphabet. It was sort of soothing, comforting. And if not, then I'll kill them too. He didn't hesitate. For a while, you're going to need to stay around me until the trace fades. Dee said something like that. I bit my lip. So you don't want me to stay away from you guys anymore? It doesn't matter what I want. He glanced down at his hand. But if I had my way, you wouldn't be anywhere near us. I sucked in a sharp breath, pulling my hand free. Gee, don't be honest or anything. You don't understand, Damon replied. Right now, you can lead an Aram right to my sister. And I have to protect her. She's all I have left. And I have to protect the others here. I'm the strongest. That is what I do. And while you're carrying the trace on you, I don't want you going anywhere with Dee if I'm not with you. Sitting up, I glanced toward the shore. I think it's time I head back. His fingers wrapped around my arm. The skin tingled. Right now, you can't be out there by yourself. I need to be with you until the trace fades. I don't need you to play babysitter. My jaw ached from how hard it was clenching. The whole staying away from Dee pissed me off, but I understood. Doesn't mean his words didn't hurt. I'll stay away from Dee until it fades. You're still not getting it. His grip didn't tighten, but I had a feeling he wanted to shake the crap out of me, even though I knew he never would. If an Aram gets a hold of you, they aren't going to kill you. The one at the library, he was playing with you. He was going to get you to the point that you'd beg for your life and then force you to take him back to one of us. I swallowed. Damon. You don't have a choice. Right now, you're a huge risk with the trace. You're a danger to my sister. I will not let anything happen to her. His love for his sister was admirable, but did nothing to stop the flow of anger rushing through my veins. And then after the trace fades, then what? I prefer that you'd stay the hell away from all of us, but I doubt that's going to happen, and my sister does care for you. He let go of my arm and leaned back, resting on his elbows. As long as you don't end up with another trace, then I don't have a problem with you being friends with her. My hands balled into fists. I'm so grateful to have your approval. His little half smile didn't reach his eyes. His smile really did. I've already lost one sibling because of how he felt for a human. I'm not going to lose another. Anger was simmering in me, but his words caught my attention. You're talking about your brother and Bethany. There was a pause, and then, my brother fell in love with a human, and now they're both dead. Okay. Chapter 19. Like he turned off my bitch switch. All I could do was stare at him. There was a feeling in my gut that told me I already knew this stuff, but I hadn't want to acknowledge it. God, he was such a jerk, but my anger eased off, lessening and leaving uncertainty in its wake. What happened? I asked. He was staring over my shoulder, focused on the trees behind me. Dawson met Bethany, and I swear to you, it was like love at first sight. Everything for him became about her. Matthew, Mr. Garrison, warned him. I warned him that it wasn't going to work. There was no way that we can have a relationship with a human. Pressing his lips together, he took a moment. You don't know how hard it is, Kat. We have to hide what we are all the time, and even among our own kind. We have to be careful. There are many rules. The DoD and Luxon don't like the idea of us messing with humans. He paused, shaking his head. It's as if they think we're animals beneath them. But you're not animals, I said. They were definitely not like us. They weren't beneath us. Do you know any time we apply for something, it's tracked by the DoD? He glanced at me, eyes troubled, angry. Driver's license, they know. If we apply for college, they see it. Marriage license to a human, forget it. We even have to have a registration. If we go, we even have a registration we have to go through if we want to move. Sorry, guys. I blinked. Can they do that? He laughed humorously. This is your planet, not ours. You even said it, and they keep us in place by funding our lives. We have random check-ins, so we can't hide anything. Once they know we're here, that's it. Not sure what to say, I remained quiet. Everything about their lives seemed controlled, chronicled. It was frightening and sad. And that's not all. We're expected to find another Lux and to stay there. Alarm trickled through my system. Was he obligated to Ash? It seemed the wrong time to ask, and seemed even more wrong that I wanted to ask. That doesn't seem fair. It's not. Damon sat up in one fluid motion, dropping his arms over his bent knees. It's easy to feel human. I know. I know I'm not. But I want the same things that all humans want. He stopped, shaking his head. Anyway, something happened between Dawson and Bethany. I don't know what. He never said. They went out hiking one Saturday, and he came back late, his clothing torn and covered in blood. They were closer than ever. If Matt and the Thompsons didn't have their suspicions before, they did then. That following weekend, Dawson and Bethany went out to the movies. They never came back. I squeezed my eyes shut. The DoD the next day in Moorfield, his body dumped in a field like garbage. His voice was low, rough. I didn't even get to say goodbye. They took his body before I could even see him, because of the risk of exposure. When we die or get hurt, we resort back to our true form. I ached for that, for him, and Dee. Are you sure he's dead then, if you've never seen his body? I know an Aram got him, drained him of his abilities, and killed him. If he was still alive, he would have found a way to contact us. Both his and Bethany's bodies were taken away before anyone could see. Her parents will never know what happened to her, and all we know is that he had to have done something that left a trace on her, enabling the Aram to find him. That's the only way. They can't sense us here. He had to have done something major. My chest squeezed. I couldn't imagine what he and Dee had to have felt. My father's death had been expected. It hurt. It felt like his sickness and eventual death was killing me, but he hadn't been murdered. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know there's nothing I can say. I'm just so sorry. He shifted slightly, lifting his head to the sky. In a second, the mask he wore slipped down, and there was the real Damon. Still a total badass, but there was a pain in him, a vulnerability in the lines of his face that I doubted anyone ever got to see. And suddenly, I felt like I was intruding, witnessing his moment. For it to be me, of all people, to see beneath the layers of attitude that didn't seem right, it should have been someone he cared about, someone important to him. I'm this idiot, he said raggedly. My heart clenched. The pain in his voice pricked at me. Not thinking, I turned around and reached over, wrapping my arms around his all-too-stiff body. I hugged him, squeezing him as tightly as I could, and then I let him go before he overreacted and threw me off the rock. Damon still didn't move. He stared at me, eyes wide, like he'd never been hugged before. Maybe the Luxon didn't believe in hugs. I lowered my gaze. I miss my dad too. It doesn't get any easier. His breath expelled harshly. Dee said he was sick, but not what was wrong with him. I'm sorry for your loss. Sickness isn't something we're accustomed to. What was it? I told him about my dad's cancer, which was surprisingly easy. And then I told him about the better things my dad and I shared before he got sick. How I used to garden with him and we'd spend Saturday mornings during the spring searching for new plants and flowers. And he shared memories of Dawson, the first time they hiked the Seneca Rocks, and the time that Dawson had morphed into someone else and couldn't figure out how to change back. We stayed there, somehow finding a peace in talking about them until the sun started to fade and the rock lost its warmth. And it was just me and him, in the dusk, staring at the stars filling the sky. I was reluctant to leave, not because the water would be cold, because I knew that this little piece of this world that we created, where we weren't arguing or hating one another, wouldn't last. It seemed that Damon needed someone to talk to, and I happened to be there. I asked the right questions, and it was the same for me. He was here. At least that's what I was telling myself, because I knew tomorrow would be no different than the week before. We had to go back to the real world, and Damon wishing he'd never met me. Neither of us spoke until we were on my porch. The light was on in the living room, so when I did speak, I kept my voice low. What happens now? Damon's hands were fists at his side as he looked away, not answering. I started to turn, but in the time it took me to blink my eyes, Damon was already gone. Sorry. Just got a message I need to reply to. Cool. Apologies. I am a person too. I have things that I need to reply to. My mother. Thing. People. My mother is people's. Okay. You didn't do anything for Labor Day? Lisa pointed at Carissa behind her. You live a life as exciting as Carissa. Carissa rolled her eyes as she straightened her glasses. Not all of us have parents who whisk us away for a quick weekend in North Carolina. We aren't as cool as you. It wasn't like I could tell them I did have an exciting weekend, one involving almost getting hit by a truck and proving the existence of extraterrestrial life forms. So I shrugged and scribbled in my notebook. Just hung out at home. I can see why. Lisa tipped her chin toward the front of the classroom. I would too if I lived next to that. You should have been born as a man, Carissa remarked, and I hid a smile. Those two were a riot. one as oppressed as the other ballsy. I always felt like I was watching an insane tennis match between the angel on my left shoulder and the devil on my right. But I didn't need to look up and see what they were talking about Damon. Last night I'd barely slept. Only thing I was certain come Tuesday morning, I wouldn't act like anything was different. I ignored him, which is what I did before I found out he was from far, far away. And it worked right up until he sat behind me, and I felt his pen poking against my back. Oh, that pen, guys. Sorry, I got distracted. Slowly, I set my pen down and casually turned around. Yes. Sooty lashes lowered, but not before I saw the sparkle in his eyes. My house. After school. Lisa's audible intake of breath was sort of embarrassing. I knew I had to hang out with Damon until the damn trace thing faded, but I didn't take well to being ordered around. I have plans. His head moved an inch to the side. Excuse me? A small, evil part of me reveled in his surprise. I said, I have plans. A second of silence passed, and then he smiled. It wasn't as devastating as I expected, but pretty damn close. You don't have plans. How would you know? I do. Well, you're wrong. He wasn't. I didn't have plans. His gaze slid to the girls. Is she hanging out after school with either of you after school? Carissa opened her mouth, but Lisa cut her off. Nope. Some friends. Maybe I wasn't hanging out with them. Damon tipped his desk forward, closing the space between us. Besides them and Dee, what other friends do you have? I cut him a death look. I have other friends. Yeah, name one. Damn it, he called my bluff. Fine, whatever. He gave me a sexy smirk and settled back in his seat, tapping his pen on his desk. Sending him one more look of pure hatred, I turned back around. Yeah, nothing had changed. Damon followed me home after school, literally. He tailed me in his new Infiniti SUV. My old Camry, with its leaky exhaust and loud muffler, was no match for the speeds he wanted to go. I brake-checked him several times. He'd blown his horn. It made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Oh, he'd blown his horn and she fell. I'm sorry, guys. Inappropriate. As soon as I stepped outside of my car, he was right in front of the driver's side. Jesus! I rubbed my chest. Would you please stop doing that? Why? He leaned his head down. You know about us now. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't walk like a normal human being. What if my mum saw you? He grinned. I'd charm her into believing she was seeing things. All about making women feel like they're crazy, huh? Ugh, sorry, I'm just trying to get comfortable. Maybe this will help. Boop. My neighbor is singing. If you can hear somebody in the background, it's my neighbor singing. Oh. I shoved past him. Hello, welcome. Sorry, my mum is messaging me. Okay, cool. I shoved past him. I'm having dinner with my mum. Damon popped in front of me, causing me to shriek. I swung at him, but he moved to the side. God, I think you like to do that to piss me off. Who? Me? His eyes were wide with innocence. What time is dinner? 6. I stomped up the steps. And you are not invited. Like I want to eat dinner with you, he retorted. I flipped him off without looking back. You have until 6:30 to be next door, or I'm coming after you. Yeah. I went inside without looking back. Mum was standing by the window in the living room, holding a picture frame she was dusting. It was her favorite picture of us. She stopped a random teenager and asked him to take a picture while we'd been at the beach. Sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. Oh, thank you for the super heart. Sorry. Mum was standing by the window in the living room, holding a picture frame she was dusting. It was her favorite picture of us. I've already read this. She stopped a random teenager and asked him to take our picture while we'd been at the beach. One smile from her, and the kid couldn't help but obey. I remember being embarrassed she'd stopped the boy. I looked sullen next to her, put out and frustrated. I hated that picture. How long have you been standing there? Just long enough to see you give Damon the middle finger. He deserved it, I grumbled, dropping my backpack on the floor. I'm going over there after dinner. She wrinkled her nose. Do I even want to know? I sighed. Not in a million years. Ooh. If I was Mum, I'd be like, sorry, what do you mean not in a million years? What you getting up to? When I did show up next door at 6:34, it sounded like World War III had erupted in the house. I'd let myself in since no one answered the damn door. I can't believe you ate all the ice cream, Damon. I cringed and stopped inside the dining room. There was no way I was going into that kitchen. I didn't eat all of it. Oh, so it ate itself? Dee shrieked so loudly I thought I heard the rafters in the ceiling shake. Did the spoon eat it? Oh wait, I know. The carton ate it. Actually, I think the freezer ate it, Damon responded dryly. Sorry. Just have to clear my throat. I grinned when I heard what sounded like the empty container hitting what suspiciously sounded like flesh. Turning, I went back into the living room and piddled around until I heard footfalls behind me. She really likes piddling around. Damon lounged against the frame of the door that led from the dining room to the living room. I slowly took him in, his hair carelessly disheveled, and the faint light from the lamp bouncing over high cheekbones. His lips curved into a half smile, and even in the simple shirt and jeans, he looked, well, beyond words. He took up the whole room, and he wasn't even in it. One brow rose as he waited. Cat? Mentally kicking myself, I looked away. Did you get hit by an ice cream carton? Yes. Damn, and I missed it. And I missed that. I'm sure Dee would love to do a replay for you. I smiled at that. Oh, you think this is funny? Dee burst into the living room, car keys in hand. I should be making you go to the store and get me Rocky Road, but because I like Katie and value her well-being, I'm going to get it myself. That would mean I'd be left alone. Oh, hell to the no. Can't Damon go? Damon smiled at me. No, if the Aram comes around, he's only going to see your trace. Dee grabbed her purse. You need to be with Damon. He's stronger than me. My shoulders fell. Can't I go next door? You do realize your trace can be seen from the outside. Damon pushed out of the doorway. It's your funeral, though. Damon, Dee snapped. This is all your fault. My ice cream is not your ice cream. Ice cream must be very important, I said. It is my life. Dee swung her purse at Damon, but missed. And you took it from me. Damon rolled his eyes. Just get going and come right back. Yes, sir, she saluted him. You guys want anything? I shook my head. Damon did the blinking out and reappearing thing. He was now beside Dee and pulled her in for a quick hug. Be careful. There was no doubt in my mind that Damon loved and cherished his sister. He'd gladly give his life for her. The way he was always looking out for her was more than admirable. There wasn't a good enough word for it, and it made me wish I had siblings. I can hear my neighbor playing guitar and singing. It's very distracting, just like in the background. As always, she smiled, gave me a quick wave, and drifted out the door. Wow, remind me to never eat her ice cream. If you do, even I wouldn't be able to save you. He flashed a sardonic grin. So, kitten, if I'm going to be your babysitter for the evening, what's in it for me? My eyes immediately narrowed. First off, I didn't ask you to babysit me, and you made me come over, and don't call me kitten. Damon tipped his head back and laughed. The sound sent shivers through me, reminding me of waking up with him, my head in his lap. Aren't you feisty tonight? You ain't seen nothing yet. Still chuckling, he turned toward the kitchen. I can believe that. Never a dull moment when you're around. He paused. Are you coming or not? I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Going where? He pushed open the kitchen door. I'm hungry. Didn't you just eat all the ice cream? Yeah, still hungry. Good lord, aliens can eat. I stayed put. Damon glanced over his broad shoulder. I have this strong inclination that I need to keep an eye on you. Where I go, you go. He waited for me to move, and when I didn't, his smile turned devilish. Or I can forcibly move you. I was pretty sure I didn't want to know how he planned to do that. All right, let's go. I shuffled past him and plopped down in the seat at the table. Damon grabbed a plate of leftover chicken. Want some? I shook my head. Unlike them, I didn't eat 10 square meals a day. He was quiet as he moved around the kitchen. Since the night on the rock, we hadn't been at each other's throats. It wasn't like we were getting along, but it seemed like an undeclared truce existed. I had no idea what to do with him since we weren't trying to tick each other off. Resting my cheek on my palm, I had a hard time pulling my eyes off of him. He was broad and tall, but he moved like a dancer. Each step was smooth and supple. Even the simplest movement looked like a form of art. This girl's got it bad. Then there was his face. At that moment, he peered up from his plate. So how you holding up? I tore my eyes from him and focused on the plate of food that was already half eaten. How long had I been staring at him? This was getting ridiculous. Did the trace turn me into a walking hormone? I'm doing okay. He took a bite of chicken and chewed slowly. You've accepted all of this. I'm surprised. What did you think I'd do? Damon shrugged. With humans, the possibilities are endless. I bit my lip. Do you think that we are somehow weaker than you because we're human? It's not that I think you're weaker. I know you are. He eyed me over his glass of milk. I'm not trying to be obnoxious by saying that. You are weaker than us. I'm sorry. He's drinking a glass of milk and eating chicken. That to me sounds like the most disgusting combination of food. Unless it was like you were eating fried chicken and waffles with a milkshake, then yeah, but this is literally a glass of milk and chicken. Is he dipping the chicken flesh in the milk? Oh, thank you. Oh, you guys are so sweet. You're on a roll. Maybe physically, but not mentally or morally, I countered. Morally? He sounded confused. Yeah, I'm not going to tell the world about you guys to get money. And if I was captured by an Aram, I wouldn't bring them back to you at all. Wouldn't you? Offended, I leaned back and folded my arms. No, I wouldn't. Even if your life was threatened? Disbelief colored his tone. Shaking my head, I laughed. Just because I'm human doesn't mean I'm a coward or unethical. I'd never do anything that would put Dee in danger. Why would my life be more valuable than hers? Now yours, debatable, but not Dee. He stared at me for several seconds, then went back to his food. If I was expecting an apology, I wasn't going to get one. Big surprise there. So, how long will it take for this trace to fade? My eyes went right back to him. Very annoying. Damon's eyes were intent and bright. The green hue seemed to burn through me. He took a long, healthy drink. I swallowed, my throat dry. Probably a week or two, maybe less, he said, squinting. It's already starting to fade. It was weird that he was talking about this light around me that I couldn't see. What do I look like? A giant bulb or something? He chuckled, shaking his head. It's a soft white glow that's around your body, kind of like a halo. Oh, well that's not too bad. Are you done? When he nodded, I grabbed his plate out of habit. Not to throw it at him, but mainly out of something to do. At least I don't look like a Christmas tree. You look like the star atop the tree. His breath stirred the hair around my cheek. Gasping, I turned around. Damon stood directly behind me, our bodies separated only by a foot or two. Placing my hands on the edge of the counter, I dragged in a deep breath. I hate it when you do that alien super speed thing. Smiling, he cocked his head to the side. Kitten, what are we going to get into? 1,000 images flashed. Thank God reading thoughts wasn't one of his alien powers. Such a strange thickness invaded the air around me. and this overwhelming yearning from deep inside sprung to life. "Why not hand me over to the DOD?" I blurted out. Damon took a step back, surprised. "What?" I wish I hadn't gone there, but I did, and there was no coming back from it. "Wouldn't everything have been easier for you if you just handed me over to the DOD? Then you wouldn't have to worry about D or anything." Damon stood inside. There's a lot of D's happening. The letter D. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter D. And the number 12. The color of his eyes went up a notch, becoming brighter. I wanted to take a step back, but there was nowhere to go. Voice low, he said, I don't know, kitten." "You don't know? You risk everything and you don't know why?" "That's what I said." I stared at him, bewildered by the fact that he'd put everything on the line and seemed to have no idea why. That was crazy to me. Absurd. Admittedly, it was unnerving because it would mean many things. It could mean many things. Things I didn't dare acknowledge. His arms quickly shot out, landing heavily against the counter. Bands of muscle created a very successful trap, pinning me in place without even touching. He lowered his head, and dark waves spilled over his eyes. "Okay, I do know why." At first, I had no idea what he was talking about. "You do?" Damon nodded. "You wouldn't survive a day without us." "You don't know that." "Oh, I know." He tilted his head to the side. "Do you know how many Aram I have faced? Hundreds. And there'd be times I barely escaped. A human doesn't stand a chance against them or the DOD. Fine, whatever. Can you move?" Standing his ground, Damon smiled. God, he was exasperating. I could either stand here, stare at him like an idiot, or I could move past him. I opted for the latter. My plan was to muscle my way around him as quickly as possible. Not that I got very far. He was like a brick wall, only a freight train could knock out of the way. He grinned wider, entertained by my lack of progress. "Asshole," I muttered. Damon laughed. "You have such a mouth on you." "Do you kiss boys with that thing?" My cheeks heated. Do you kiss Ash with yours?" "Ash?" His smile disappeared, and his eyes were suddenly hooded, less clear. "You would like to know that, wouldn't you?" An unreasonable spark of jealousy flared in me, but I pushed it aside. I smirked. "No, thank you." Damon leaned in even closer. His spicy and earthy scent surrounded me. You aren't a very good liar, kitten. Your cheeks get red whenever you lie." "Do they?" "Oh, hell." I tried pushing past him again, but he reached out, taking hold of my arm. It wasn't a tight grip, but I still felt it down to my bone. His hand hummed. Tingles were sharp and startling, yet pleasant. I didn't want to look at him, but I didn't seem capable of stopping myself. We were too close, and that was too much tension between us. His gaze burned as it latched onto mine. He lowered his head, and I forgot how to breathe. Fascinated, I watched his lips curve into a smile. It was hard to pay attention to his words when he spoke, but they somehow made it through the strange fog clouding my brain. I have a strange idea that I should test this out. Test what? My eyes dropped to his lips. I felt myself sway. "I think you would like to know." He moved closer, his hand sliding up my arm and resting carefully at the nape of my neck. "You have beautiful hair." "What?" "Nothing." His fingers spread across the back of my neck, slowly weaving themselves through strands of loose hair. Oh, we're getting into the thick of it, fam. My goodness. Here we go. His deft fingers moved against the base of my skull. My lips parted, and I waited. He dropped his hand and reached out again. As I stood there, eager, maybe too eager, to discover if he felt the same unexpected ache, if he was any bit as affected as I was. Instead, Damon plucked up a bottle of water from the counter. I slumped against the counter. What the holy hell? His eyes danced with laughter as he turned back to the table. "What was it that you were asking, kitten?" "Stop calling me that." He took a drink. Did D pick up a movie or something?" I nodded. Yeah, she mentioned it early in class. Well, come on, let's go watch a movie. I pushed away from the counter and followed behind him. I lingered by the door as he held the DVD up and frowned. Whose idea was this? I shrugged and then watched his brows rise as he read the blurb on the back. Whatever, he muttered, clearing my throat. Clearing my throat. I took one step into the room. Look, Damon, you don't have to sit and watch a movie with me. If you have other things you want to do, I'm sure I'll be fine. He glanced up from the movie, and then I shrugged. I have nothing to do. Okay. I was still unsure. Imagining him enjoying a movie night with me was more far-fetched than the idea of aliens living among humans. I dragged myself across the room and sat on the couch as he fiddled with the movie. After sliding the disc in, he approached the couch and sat on the far end. Then the television came on, and I would swear he'd left the remote by the TV. It was probably a good thing I didn't have his power. I'd be beyond lazy. He glanced at me, and I immediately faced the television. If you fall asleep during the movie, you'll owe me. I turned to him with a frown. Why? Damon spared me a wolfish smile. Just watch the movie. I made a face, but remained quiet. Damon shifted. The couch dipped, and the distance between us grew smaller. I held my breath until I had to come up for air. He didn't seem to notice as the open credits rolled over the screen. I stared at his profile and wondered for the 100th time what he could be thinking. And, like always, I came up empty. Out of frustration, I turned back to the movie and decided the strange pull I felt for him had to be my imagination. It couldn't be anything more. Tense and unused to what I was feeling, I counted the minutes till Dee returned. Chapter 20. The last chapter of the evening, ladies, gents, and otherwise. Damon was surprisingly subdued in math on Wednesday. The inevitable pen poke only came once, and that was to remind me the only plans I had after school were with him. Yeah, whatever, like I could forget. In bio, the day before, Mr. Garrison's keen stare kept going back to me. I knew he saw the trace, and I had no clue what he was thinking. Damon hadn't mentioned if he and Dee had said anything to the other Luxon. Throughout the day before, several teachers had given me weird looks. Today, one of the coaches I passed on the way to the cafeteria stopped in the middle of the hall and looked me up and down. Either he was a perv or an alien, or both, which would be a winning combination. While standing in the lunch line, I did everything in my power to not look toward the back of the cafeteria. Staring at the food, I stepped forward and nearly bounced off the back of a walking mountain. Simon Cutters turned around, and then he looked down. He smiled when he saw me. Hey there, Katie. I handed my money to the checkout lady and turned to Simon. Sorry about that. No problem. He waited for me at the end of the line, his plate full of food. He almost ate as much as Dee. Did you have a clue what Monroe was talking about in Trig? I swear it was a different language. Considering I'd spent most of the class ignoring the boy behind me, I have no clue. I'm hoping someone took notes. I shifted my plate. We have a test next week, right? Simon nodded. Right before the game, too. I think Monroe does that. Someone reached in to grab a drink, forcing us to take a step back from each other. Which wasn't necessary since anyone could have walked around us. When I inhaled at the crisp scent, I realized who it was. Damon grabbed a carton of milk off the cart and flipped it. Classic, Damon and his milk. Passing me an unreadable glance, he turned to Simon. Both of them were the same height, but Simon was much broader. Still, Damon gave off a more badass vibe. How are you doing, Simon? He asked, flipping the carton again. Blinking as he backed up, Simon cleared his throat. Good, doing good. Heading over to my table. He looked at me nervously. See you in class, Katie. Frowning, I watched Simon trip over his own feet to get to his table. I turned back to Damon. Okay? Are you planning on sitting with Simon? He asked, crossing one arm over his chest. What? No, I laughed. I was planning on sitting with Lisa and Carissa. So am I, Jean chimed in, coming out of nowhere. She balanced a plate in one hand and 2 drinks in another. That is, if you think I'd be welcomed. I'm sure you will be. I glanced back at Damon, but he was already heading back to his table. I stood there for about a moment, confused. What the hell had that all been about? There were the Thompson twins and Ash. Huddled together. A few of the kids were chatting. I had no idea if they were aliens or not. Damon sat down beside them, pulled out a book, and started thumbing through it. Ash looked up and didn't appear too thrilled. Do you think anyone else will mind? I asked finally. No. I hated that I didn't sit with you yesterday, and I think it's time for a change-up. Do you look so hopeful? I couldn't disagree. Right? Lisa and Carissa were shocked into stunning silence for roughly 5 minutes after Dee joined me at their table, but she won them over and everyone relaxed pretty quickly. Everyone but me. Half the cafeteria watched me, probably waiting for me to get into another epic food fight with Blondie. It had been a week, and still everyone considered me the food ninja. Every so often, Ash glanced over at our table, a deep scowl on her beautiful face. She had an electric blue chewed top that matched her eyes. The white skirt she wore over it was unbuttoned, revealing that she had a kick-ass body. God, what was up with alien DNA? I got that they were otherworldly, but Jesus, did that include perfect breasts too? Bubs! Dee nudged me with her elbow while Carissa and Lisa chatted with a freckled-faced boy at the end of the table. What? I asked. She leaned into my shoulder, speaking only so I could hear. What's going on with you and my brother? I took a bite of my pizza, mulling over how to answer that. Nothing, the same old. Dee arched a perfectly groomed brow. Yeah, he was gone all day Sunday, and so are you. And while he was gone, a certain someone came looking for him. My slice flopped in my hand. She picked up her drink, smiling slightly. I didn't get to tell you yesterday, since he was up our butts, but you can't tell me you haven't noticed Ash giving you the stink eye. I have, Lisa cut in, plopping her elbows on the table. She looks like she's wishing you dead. I made a face. Gee, that's nice. And you have no idea why? Dee asked, angling her body so her back was to their table. Pretend you're looking at me, right now. I am looking at you right now, I pointed out, taking another bite of my pizza. Lisa laughed. Look over her shoulder, genius. Toward the table. Rolling my eyes, I did as they instructed. At first, I noticed that one of the blonde boys was turned in his seat, talking it up with the boy at the table in front of them. Then I shifted my gaze, and my eyes locked with Damon's. Even though several tables separated us, my breath caught. There was something wicked in those emerald-colored eyes, consuming. I couldn't look away, and he didn't either. The distance between us seemed to evaporate. A second later, he smirked and turned away, focusing on what Ash was saying to him. Drawing in a shallow breath, I focused on my friends. Yeah, Lisa murmured dreamily. That's why. There's no reason my face felt on fire. Did you see him? He's only making the lip thing at me. The lip thing is sexy. Lisa glanced at Dee. Sorry, I know he's your brother and all. It's okay. I'm used to it. Dee rested her chin in her hand. Remember the day on the porch? I narrowed my eyes at her. What happened on the porch? Lisa asked, curious enough that her dark eyes gleamed. Nothing, I said. They were like this close. Dee held up a finger and her thumbs, so there was barely a centimeter between the two. And I'm sure they've gotten closer. My mouth dropped open. We have not, Dee. We don't even like each other, like on a basic level. Carissa took her glasses off and blew on them. What's going on? Lisa filled her in, much to my horror. Oh yeah, Carissa nodded. They were googly-eyed in class on Friday. It was pretty steamy, The whole "I'm screwing you with my eyes" thing they had going on. I choked on my drink. That's not what we were doing. We were talking. Katie, you were so doing it. Lisa picked up a napkin and started rolling it. Nothing to be ashamed of. I'd do it too, if he'd be game. I stared at her a second, then busted out laughing. You guys are insane. There's nothing going on. I looked at Dee. And you should know that. I know a lot of things, she said innocently. My brows furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugged and pointed at my second slice. You going to eat that? I picked it up and handed it over. She ignored my look a while she happily devoured my extra slice of pizza. Oh, guys, did you hear about Sarah? Carissa flipped closed her cell phone, looking up. I almost forgot. No? Lisa glanced over at me. Carissa's older brother, Ben, is friends with Sarah's brother. They go to VW together. Oh. I turned my drink around and started peeling off the label. When I thought of Sarah, I thought of the hospital and how I heard about her death. And I thought of the Aram and how they were around. Robbie told Ben that the police didn't think it was a heart attack or a natural cause. Carissa looked around the table, lowering her voice. Or at least no natural causes that they're aware of. Dee lowered her pizza from her mouth. That's how I knew this was serious. What do you mean? Apparently there was so much damage to her heart, there was no way it could be like that, regardless of if she had any heart conditions, Carissa explained. Dee shrugged. I know, but what else could it be? I glanced at Dee, having an idea of what it could have been. After lunch, I dragged her to the side. Was it one of them? I asked. One of the Aram? Dee bit down on her lip, and then she tugged me away from the cafeteria doors and her brother, who was coming out of the room. Down the hall, she stopped. It was, but Damon took care of him. I hesitated. Is it the same one who attacked me? It was. Dee glanced behind her. Lips thin. Ugh. Dee glanced behind. Anyway. Damon thinks it's probably. I think she was just looking behind her. I'm like, what is happening? Dee glanced behind her. Lips thin. Damon thinks it was purely coincidental the Aram stumbled across her. She didn't know us, I swear. That didn't make any sense to me. Then why? Dee met my stare. They don't need a reason, Katie. The Aram are evil. They kill us for our powers. She paused, paling. And they kill humans for the fun of it. Da, 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 da. That brings us up to chapter 21. And there's only, like 30 chapters in here? Whoa, look at that. We smashed through it. That's the first book. I don't think I've ever read a book that fast. That's probably a lie. But that was, we got through a chunk of it only in a few days. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with myself. Yes, go girl. Reading that book. I haven't read a book properly for a long, long time. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Just the sheer insanity of it as an idea and a novel. I love it. It's great. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Sorry, my connection dropped. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow for another reading. I will post up when I'm going to do the reading. So yes, I will see you then. That's so love you. That's so lovely. Thank you for all the awards tonight. Very much appreciated. How many stars would you give? Oh, to this book? Look, it was a number one. It says on the front cover, #1 New York Times best-selling. Oh, look, this particular one in the series, because it was the very first one and she was in her early 20s or something when she wrote it. So the language, I'm not too fond of the language and the way that she's telling the story. It's the story that I like. So at least in the first one, because she was quite young when she wrote it, so I can understand why the language is the way it is. I would say I'd give this a 3.5. out of 5. So yeah, it's just like it's so cheesy, and I'm finding it really hard to kind of like get through the cheesiness of it. Um, yes. So, but I'm enjoying. It's like, when you have those movies or those series that are like your guilty pleasures because they're bad and they're like low quality, but there's just something so good about them. That's this book for me. Is like, this is my guilty pleasure that like I'm sharing with you guys. So no judgment. Anyway, thank you again for sticking around for my reading. If you're watching this from any other platform, feel free to join me on Haps. I'll be on shortly. See you guys around.